Up top. Welcome to episode 153 of the OmniGamers Club podcast, the podcast for games on all platforms, including the Hidiz AP30. I'm Mark Uasa.
And I am Daniel Winter. Hello, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. We said we would have a guest this week, but there was a scheduling confusion, so we're going sans guest for the moment, but don't worry, we have plenty to talk about this episode.
All the more games for us to eat up. It's a stressful weekend for my family here with some pet-related news, so mostly been keeping it fairly chill, but still lots to talk about. Mark, what's news to you this week?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we said we would try to be less bummers in the news area, but I do have a bummer story that's pretty significant and also a bit different in nature than the ones we've covered before. This time it's not cost-cutting measures, I suppose, but it's an unfortunate bankruptcy, this time in the TTRPG space, with Paizo, who are most famous for publishing games like Pathfinder and Starfinder, TTRPGs. Of course, they've licensed those games out to the video game space as well. But they unfortunately have had to restructure. Some have reported it out as bankruptcy, but it's essentially tied to the Diamond Comics closure of this earlier this year. Have you heard anything about that and the fallout that came?
I mean, I don't know, it's a long-running saga with Diamond over there and the various efforts they've made to try and salvage that, but it doesn't seem like it's being particularly successful. It's obviously having a lot of collateral damage on the various collaborations with other companies they've had. In this case, it seems like it was not necessarily to any fault of Paizo. Diamond had been distributing a lot of games for other publishers and were basically holding that hostage or trying to sell off that as stock for their own bankruptcy, I believe.
That's exactly right. So Paizo got kind of caught in the crosshairs of the unfortunate Diamond Comics bankruptcy, and they had a bunch of their stock held up, stock that was essentially being sold at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, major retailers like that. So that had a knock-on effect, and unfortunately, Paizo is having to lay off at least 12 employees. That's what they reported in a link that we'll share out, and they have to make a couple of other structural changes as well. It might affect their organized play aspects like that, so there's a lot more details involved in that article, but it is an unfortunate and I guess like serious impact of some of the, maybe this is even related to some of the supply chain issues, echoes of COVID era supply chain issues, and even the more recent printing related issues that might have come from the Strait of Hormuz matter, the petroleum, I should say.
That's just it. Like, aside from all of the wanton behavior of some of the bigger companies in this space, we're seeing a lot of the collateral damage from the tariffs, from these bankruptcies having downslope effects. If memory serves correctly, I believe Paizo employees unionized quite recently, right?
That is right, and they informed the union that this would be happening. They said they gave them 20 business days notice that certain positions would be affected. But, it seems like Paizo is not in the wrong in this case. They're just sort of being forced by larger forces.
I'm sure it's small comfort to those affected, but they're being treated much better than they would be in other areas of this industry right now.
Yeah, Paizo has at least been good about the communications, putting a lot of information out there. And I'll share a link on the Rascal News website as well for some more unbiased reporting.
Excellent.
All right, how about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I just had a couple of quick game announcements. I'm going to keep it short, but largely a couple of things that were of note to our discussion of nature last week. I've had that sort of sense of ecosystems and nature themes on my mind, and by happenstance saw a couple of games that were of interest in a similar field. One is a game called Orbitstar Expedition to Darwin IV. So this is by Bobby Hill, Wayne Barlow, and Arcus Games. Bobby Hill, I know, a collaborator with Shem Phillips over in New Zealand, so people may recognise his name. But this is a fairly new publisher. They've put a couple of games out called, I think it was like a Shelfie Stacker, I want to say. I recall seeing, but this is basically a speculative ecosystem, like natural science setting based on an old book. You see, Wayne Barlow, the artist. It was his book called Expedition from 1990. That was like basically a sci-fi. Looks like a natural history book of various species that you might find on this fictional sci-fi planet. Essentially, very similar to a book I discussed recently called Flight of Dragons. Sort of the fantasy take on that, which was analyzing dragons as if they existed from the sort of evolutionary natural sciences perspective. So I thought that was a really fascinating example and a very much more fantastical take on science and biology and evolution, exploring a sci-fi world with some really fantastic sort of very retro sci-fi art.
That sounds really cool and right up my alley as well. So I'd be interested in seeing that.
In just to keep on the same trend here, another announcement is that Dominant Species, classic board game, favorite of many, is getting a reprint from Allplay. And it's a game I own. I believe it was GMT originally had printed that. I bought a secondhand copy at some point. Still haven't played it. That is a much more cutthroat game of evolution, is my understanding. Basically a war game with lots of little chits on a map. Very abstracted, but very much involved, heavy simulation of evolution. But this new edition is not just from Allplay, but probably the biggest game that Allplay has published, I would say. They are known for small box games. They have been expanding their library, and this is, I think, a big leap by far, but also illustrated by Ian O'Toole, is always a favourite, especially illustrating those big box games. He's got a fantastic sense of graphic design and sort of helping, like with player aids and design, helping to sort of smooth the entry to some of those more complex games.
Very cool. Okay, if I may, I'm going to move on into a quick catch-up or explainer as to the intro bit there. I mentioned the Hidiz AP30. This is a new product on crowdfunding. It's a Game Boy-inspired high-res audio player. So, of course, video games and high-definition audio is an interest of mine. So, of course, this piqued my interest. I checked it out. I don't think I'm going to get it. It looks too gimmicky. It's essentially this really tiny little player that looks like a Game Boy and is the size of a little clip. You can just, attach it onto your backpack straps or something like that and play high definition audio on it. Cool. If you want to check it out, go for it or whatever. I am not backing this campaign myself. And it officially supports exactly one game, which is a likely unlicensed version of Tetris. So buyer beware on that one. So that's the Hidiz AP30.
Tetrix, I don't know, there's lots of variations.
Block stacker, whatever you want to call it. Hidiz actually does put out, is not a fly-by-night company. They have put out some other high-definition digital audio players before, some that I've tried out. So maybe it'll be good. I don't know. I swear there is going to be a convergence of Linux-based retro video game player / high resolution audio player. It's coming in some of the ads for the RG slide or the rotate, the Ambrosia RG rotate. They were showing off some screens of the audio player functionality. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a headphone jack, the rotate, I should say, and it doesn't have the high-res digital audio chip, the DAC chip that some of the more legit devices have, so I wouldn't buy it for exactly that reason. But
I know a lot of the sickos for these devices are seeking out single-use devices, something that fulfills a very specific need or sense of nostalgia, for example.
For sure. I mean, it's not like you couldn't play games on the old iPod touches or whatever, or the even the ones with the click wheel. I'm pretty sure I had Tetris on one of those.
Snake or something was on there, I'm sure.
Cool. All right. Any other news for you, Daniel?
Other bit of news I wanted to shout out is that a game I'd announced, a game that I discussed previously 6 months or so ago, Ambrosia Sky, a game that I'd really enjoyed at the Vancouver Game Garden last year. Was a little disappointed of its final release, but as I discussed then, it was basically split into two parts. The initial release was only left very much on a cliffhanger. Part 2 is now out as a free add-on to that original game. It's also on sale now. I haven't had a chance to boot this up yet, but I still really enjoyed the vibes of that game, that I'm curious to see how they can expand upon that and maybe go a little deeper into. I believe I called it one of my favorite genres, the immersive slim. That's playing with some immersive sim tropes, but didn't quite have the depth I was looking for personally.
And Slim is, I guess, a reference to the slime or something that you're going to be cleaning up as part of the gameplay.
Well, I think that works too. It's a mushroom mold, basically power wash simulator equivalent in space.
Cool. It's nice to hear that they are adding that free add-on, which kind of beefs up the initial offering for no extra cost. And I noticed that game, Ambrosia Sky, had a feature in Polygon, so that's a fairly big profile feature for that indie publisher, so good for them. Speaking of sci-fi video games, I have a little bit of Star Trek video game related news, and it's a mixed bag between positive and bummers, so buyer beware there. Two Star Trek licensed games, Resurgence and Legends, have been delisted recently for likely licensing related reasons. You know, the licensing contract runs out and they don't want to re-up it, so they take the game off the shelves, digital or otherwise. And then Legends, I think, was like a kind of like an online service game, for mobile devices. So probably they didn't want to pay the server costs. So unfortunate for those who enjoyed those two games, they are no longer available for purchase or play. But that won't stop new games from coming out, and that's what I wanted to report on. There's two games that caught my interest. One was announced a little while ago, is a strange new genre, a strange new frontier for this franchise, which is a horror game. They are making a horror-based Star Trek game called Shadow Frontier.
Is this the one with Ro Laren?
It is the one featuring Michelle Forbes as Ro Laren, one of the most complex characters in all of Star Trek lore. And we have seen her recently in, spoiler alert, in the Picard series, so we know that a little bit of what she's been up to. But it's being developed by Bloober Team, which has produced some other horror-themed games. So that's not, the worst news in the world. People have mixed opinions about Bloober, but
they're certainly a competent game developer.
Yes.
From what I've heard.
They've put out complete games before, which is more than you can say about lots of other teams. That said, there's another game that they announced, and one that is definitely of interest to me. It's called, Outposts Unknown. And this is what they call a narrative outpost builder game. So when I took a quick look at the trailer on YouTube, it looks very much like Age of Empires, or even like a Sim City. It's basically like a space colonization simulator, and Star Trek themed. You send shuttlecraft down, and Starfleet crew are moving equipment and replicators here and there, and creating power generators and water purifiers and things like that. So very, very much up my alley. And it is specifically set in the 23rd century, which puts it along the lines of the Strange New World series. So, of course, the latest Star Trek television series, and of course the same timeline as the original series of Captain Kirk and Spock. So if you like that time period, you like Star Trek at all, and kind of management sim games, you might be excited to play this one, Outposts Unknown. And unlike Star Trek Legends, this is a full-blown PC game, although it also will come out on Xbox and PS5 as well.
Excellent. I imagine if that's like an outpost building from Starfleet's perspective, you're going to be dealing with a lot of diverse ranges of various alien species, which reminds me of something like Against the Storm, which we discussed last year, and that was a fun element in a very multicultural, diverse town, and fulfilling the needs of multiple different types of group of people.
Yeah, exactly. And there was another game, I forget it was the one with the cats in it. There was the mice. It was the mice were running the colony, and then there was roving cats or whatever that would...
The pirate cats or something?
Pirate cats, something like that. I forget it. We played it at part of Steam Next Fest. But I imagine that there'll definitely be some roving Klingons or whatever threatening these outposts out in the wilds. And they also have shown off in the YouTube video that, species like the Vulcans, like science vessels, will come to get fueled or whatever at these independent colonies. So that aspect of things is quite cool. Like, you're going to see, like you said, very diverse sides of the Federation at play and non-Federation space creatures.
Excellent. Chances of a crystalline entity of some kind are high, I imagine.
Definitely. Like, that's number one threat to colonies in a distant space, I would imagine. Okay, that's it for me for news. How about yourself?
Yes, likewise. Short meal this week, so I think we'll just jump into the main course and keep it slim.
Let's do it. All right. Did you want to start off, or shall I?
Yeah, let's start with one that we're going to discuss together a little. One we teased last week, and that we both played, Rebirth. So this is from 2024, designed by Rainer Knizia, artist Anna Przybylska and Vesna Radeziuk, published by Mighty Boards. The reason this is very much in the news right now is that it just won the Kenner Spiel at the Spiel Des Jahres award a couple of weeks ago. And so I was surprised that I was still able to find a copy of this. I've been trying to track one down for a while. So snapped that up. I've played a few games. All the marketing and the way this game describes itself is all about the map of Scotland, and you're building up a map on Scotland. There is an Ireland map included as a bit of a bonus, which is what you played, if I recall correctly. Those are two different sort of games, though, which is something I wanted to discuss. But first, I guess we'll start with the basics. Mark, did you want to describe this?
Yeah, a couple of disclaimers here that, like you said, Daniel, I've only played this game exactly one time, and that would be only of the Ireland map. And, of course, that's half the game, essentially, because Scotland, as you showed me, is the other side of the board. It has a very different kind of design philosophy. I'll save the details for a little bit later, especially since you're the one who played Scotland to compare it to. So I only really know half the picture, but I did find the game intriguing, the side that I played. And also, the other side is that those listening carefully might be confused as to why a 2024 game would be winning any sort of Spiel des Jahres for this year. But if you recall, Spiel des Jahres is a German award, and it is given to games that are published in German in that year. So,
which is often a year or two delayed, right? Yeah,
that's right. So that's why a 2024 game is getting a German 2026 award. If you were confused, I was for a split second, and then I figured it out. Okay, so Rainer Knizia. This is a Rainer Knizia.
Boy, is it.
Game. It sure is. And it's unlike some of his other popular games, which are like, strictly card-based games. Like, I always talk about Lost Cities, it being one of my absolute favorite games. His map-based games are a different breed entirely, even though they share the same former math professor a penchant for having a high degree of mathematics involved. Of course, each board that you play is of either Ireland or Scotland. So set in the UK, it's entirely made up of hexagonal grids. And those grid shapes take on various forms. There's towns, are key spots on the map which are spread out various distances apart from each other. There's its castles are a specific space, and then the town spaces that essentially support the towns, show growth, aspects like that, distinguish between small towns and bigger towns. And then there are energy producing spaces and then food producing spaces, which some are restricted to just one of those kinds, and then some spaces which are sort of free to be either energy or food producing spaces. Did I miss any land types?
There's
there?
also cathedrals, but cathedrals,
Yes.
like castles, cannot be directly built on. They're kind of you build adjacent to them and can influence those spaces for other effects.
Right. Are they called cathedrals or are they called towers? I thought they were called towers in the.
Well, I think that on the island side of the map, you build towers in the cathedral spaces.
Interesting.
On Scotland,
Okay.
it's a little different.
Got it. Yeah, you're right. So, like some other Reiner Knizia map-based games, adjacency and contiguous land masses are going to be really critical. Essentially, the goal of the game, of course, is to have the highest number of points at the end of the game. And you can win points through a number of different ways. So one would be on a given turn, if you create a contiguous land area with your color of tokens on it, and they have to be of matching types. So, a key example would be a contiguous group of, say, 7 tokens that are all energy producing. Your color would give you 7 points on that turn that you placed that final tile. So that's a, in-game way to score points. There are some bonus point spaces literally on the map. You occupy that space, you get a bonus point when you place it. And then there are sort of these end-of-game goal cards, which provide some of the large part of the interactivity. How many were there when we played? It was like 8 or 10?
There's 8. On the island side of the board, there's 8 shared goal cards that might be like, build next to 4 castles that are connected to each other, build next to 4 towers that are connected to each other, build on 4 edges of the map in contiguous spaces. And so those are all 4 sort of shared goals that you're jostling for. First person to get those gets a little boost. Second and onwards gets lesser points if you achieve those. It's a little different on the Scotland side of the map, where you're basically getting private goals, and that will be something like, build next to Edinburgh Castle, build something next to what's the other one?
Stirling?
Yeah, let's go with Stirling.
Kilberry. I don't know geography of Scotland any more than you do. I'm just looking at pictures on Board Game Geek.
Yes, yeah. But building next to specific places largely and trying to fulfill goals, some of which you will already have completed.
Yes, that's right. So keeping an eye on those shared goals, if the mode you are playing supports them, is a kind of a fun and juicy competitive aspect to this game, one that I enjoyed quite a bit. And it's kind of like a point salad, because you're really getting points from a whole lot of different directions. Like I said, the immediate as you play point accrual is kind of reminds me of like a Carcassonne or something like that. Tile adjacency and geometric locations and things like that. And then the longer term goals give you something that you have to like keenly choose to grab right at the key moment. And then you would have fun situations where, you and I played a 3-player game, you, me, and Chris once again, and where a situation where I was in the lead, and then obviously you two were not, and then Chris was trying to convince you, Daniel, you really got it. You actually absolutely have to go into that one spot to prevent Mark from scoring 11 points or something like that.
I was playing this real sort of peacemaker role where I was trying to block the both of you rather than spreading your seeds wide. But at my own detriment, I will say largely. We'll possibly discuss whether that's a valid strategy.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because I think it's fair to say that this is a fairly, zero-sum game. That if you do want to block one player who might be running away with points, in any given situation where you might want to block a player, you have to make that opportunity cost decision to kind of like fall on your own sword, because you're sacrificing a juicier option that might score you more points in the immediate term or even the long term.
There are probably some like advanced plays once you've gotten a few sessions under your belt where you can maybe anticipate where people might be going more and sort of plan ahead those blockages, where you get to do the best of both worlds and build up for yourself as well as blocking others. It's hard to do with this sprawling map where you sort of, by nature, you sort of start on separate corners of the map and start building up your little empires there.
Right. Now, I can only describe what I saw. How would you say that the Scotland map differs from the Ireland map?
Well, I guess to rewind slightly and just to clarify the exact mechanics of this game is that we're all going to have a bunch of chits, like I want to say something like 30 of these chits that are going to have the tokens that will have either the energy, the food, or a town token on it. And you will pick up one of these chits at a time and you will place it somewhere on the board. So it's very limited. It's like, well, I drew a power chit. I can only place it on power spaces or one of those neutral spaces that can be either food or power. But on the Scotland side of the board, it is fairly prescriptive. Most of the spaces have a symbol, only one type of token can go there. So you're either going to be trying to build up your own power, or you're going to be trying to stop someone else from generating a whole bunch of power. And then, of course, there are other secondary things like, playing next to castles or cathedrals to try and get some goals, whether those are shared or private goals. But I think the Scotland map is quite prescriptive. Like, if you draw a power tile, chances are it's in your best interest to just play it next to the largest group of power tokens that you already have.
Right, and that was a strategy that I employed a lot. maybe that led to my eventual victory. Spoiler alerts, I did win that game. But maybe you guys, you and Chris, were seeking out the kind of longer term, larger goals. And so you can tackle this game with a variety of different strategies. So going back to the basics, like you said, you have your 30 or so basic face-down tiles. And I kind of really like that aspect of flipping over a tile. You get to look at it right after you take your turn, and then you strategize between your last play and your next play. That part I enjoyed because I liked the constraint. It made me think, I don't have infinite amount of moves. Let me choose the best move I can make right now.
It's not deterministic. It's sort of, as I said, it's prescriptive but not deterministic. You don't know exactly what you're going to be able to do and when. And can I anticipate that you're going to block me? But maybe you don't have the town tile that you need to block me. Maybe I can get one more turn in before you do so.
Right. So there's that degree of chance or the luck of the draw there at your at play, and that aspect of it reminded me quite a bit of a game like Carcassonne, where you pull a tile and you can only play that one tile. Unlike Carcassonne, everyone's pulling from the same
That's
pool.
a good analogy, yeah.
But in this game, I have felt that decision space. I liked that it was slightly constrained there. Furthermore, at the beginning of the game, you have to set aside, I think it's 4 of your own tiles, and put them away in a separate pile, and they're known to you. You can check what they are, but they're inaccessible to you unless you play at a certain type of point. And this is something we didn't explain, but the towers are unique in the sense that they each come with a sort of a superpower, an extra effect that happens when you either immediately when you play next to them, or when you play next to, like, say, 2 connected ones, or 3 connected ones, 3 thematically connected ones. So let's see if I can remember.
This is on the Ireland side of the map, to be clear.
Well, it's not on the Scotland side.
No, it's completely different on Scotland.
Okay, well, that would change things quite a bit. Yeah, so some examples are you get to draw like 3 additional tiles and then choose from one of those tiles to make your next move. So,
or play a second tile. It's one of those face down ones that was taken out at the start of the game, which isn't like in Scotland. Those tiles are just gone. You will never get to use those. On islands, you can sort of space them out when there's sort of a separate pool that you know what's in there and you can draw at opportune times.
Yeah, and I don't remember what all the towers do, but I
of them is
recall
points.
that
If you get it's 3 towers will have 13 points. And if you collect all of them, you get those points. Otherwise, it's nothing.
Right. And of course, the towers, not just focusing on the effects that happen when you place a tile next to them, but also there are some of those long-term goals that come into play when you, relative to the position of tiles that you place next to towers, for instance. So there would be a reward that says, if you play a contiguous group of tiles of your color that connect 4 towers, you would gain X a number of points too. So towers / cathedrals are definitely a key aspect of the gameplay. I thought a little bit more enticing than the castles. The castles and the towns were a little bit of a bummer. like a very obvious sort of point, mathematically divisible point-based
It's a bit of an
spread.
area control situation where you want, like, in every castle you control will give you 5 points at the end of the game, and there is a bit of like deterministic, like, well, if I put a farm here, and I know that if anyone else plays a farm, I'll retain that for now. Like, you can sort of play the odds. Like, if I play this many farms, no one will be able to take this castle from me. So you're trying to cover your bases. How long until someone might come in and try and take it from you? And sort of, it's a very, very staggered sense of area control in that sense.
Yeah, and let's explain that a little bit further too. So there are those fixed castle spaces, they're named spaces, and they'll never move. And as soon as somebody places a tile next to it, you get to put your player color of castle, tower, castle in that castle space, and it's under your control until a point at which a majority of other tiles supersedes it, but with some key exceptions. So if there's a tie, the tie splits to the defender. So if I had an orange tile and you had a blue tile next to it, it would retain with whoever went there first until the second tile goes down. And then the town tiles work a little bit differently, right?
Yeah, well, the tiles, the towns score based on majority for one thing. There are varying sizes, numbers of units, but in terms of how they control the castles, they lose ties essentially. If each player has the same number of adjacent spaces, towns will lose that tie. So there is this sort of hierarchy of priorities in terms of, if you want to take those castles, what spaces are the most defensible. Strangely enough, towns terrible for defending castles.
Right, and it's really odd because towns are always next to castles.
Yes, yeah.
They're in this game. They're actually, that's not true. There are standalone ones, but the town spaces are predominantly next to castles. Let's just say
Castles everywhere in Scotland and Ireland.
absolutely. But it's odd that the towns are of a defined size. So some are one space, 2, 3, 4, up to 4 spaces, and those maximum sizes are fixed. Players obviously only put one tile down at per turn. That's their maximum that they can put down, typically, unless you get that one bonus. And the town tokens that you put down have different strengths, don't they? So you might have a town marker in your color that is, kind of like 1 population, 2 population, 3, even 4 population on them. So they have a strength between 1 through 4. And if the town only has a maximum size of 1, you win that town, no matter what tile you put down. And then you score exactly the number of points equal to the strength of that token.
And there is a lot of calculation going on, like, as to if you already have like one tile in a 2-space town, like, do you place the second one there to control it completely, get the 5 points or however many points it is, or do you let someone else sneak in there and get the 3 points for free? But meanwhile, they're not contesting you somewhere else. It can feel a little tit for tat, like that. Really, regardless of which way you do that, it's going to balance out largely the same unless you really get into the nitty gritty of the maths, and not particularly exciting in how you do that. But there is quite a lot of nuance into how that control mechanism works.
Yeah, there is, but I thought that was the most dry and the least interesting kind of point of contention. Let's just say, on the map. Like, it's there, but I didn't really put too much stock into it. And I thought, in fact, having influence in towns was more interesting in how they related to the longer term goals. For instance, you gain X number of points if you control 3 small towns, or have people in, 3 medium towns or something like that.
I thought really is a puzzle trying to fulfill as many of those as possible before anyone else does. And that's right. Quite satisfying.
It is a puzzle, and it is up to chance, as we determined, as we stated. The tiles that you pull every turn are not up to you. And timing is really critical. This is a game all about timing, and essentially betting that this is the most opportune time to do something, or I cannot possibly let this opportunity slip by you. So as a result, it feels very exciting because you're having to kind of like have your eyes laser focused on many goals all at once. Many
how
avenues.
close everyone else is to those goals, especially on the
Right.
island side of the map at least. Like, oh, I've got 3 connected castles. Do I need to race to get the 4th, or is no one else anywhere near that? Can I go and prioritize something else for now? Whereas Scotland, everyone's got their own private goals that are independent of each other. You're getting one at a time. It's fairly inconsequential to just like focus on one goal at a time as you get those goals. And like I said, oftentimes you've already got it. I do think the island side of the map is a lot more engaging and dynamic in trying to balance so many plates and all those different scoring opportunities.
So those private goals, are they literally the same definitions as those shared goals?
No, they're a completely different deck of cards. Like I said, it'll be something like have a castle next to Edinburgh, or at least have the most castles next to Edinburgh. They're fairly straightforward to complete. They're generally worth 3 to 5 points, as opposed to I think 8 to 12 points on the island side of the map.
Yeah, I found that the shared goals were much more exciting, especially in some cases where if you placed tokens next to certain towers, you could put 2 times points multiplier on a goal of your choice.
Double your odds, basically.
Exactly. So if you feel pretty good about one particular goal, you could double 8 points, which is pretty significant. It has, game-altering consequences.
If I recall correctly, the both of you blocked me from getting that times 2 token entirely. I was not able to get mine up into the board.
I mean, that's the thing, right? We may have blocked you, but was it an intentional blocking?
You blocked me very slowly in a way that I didn't block in return.
Okay. Yeah, there's definitely moments where you're doing that typical thing of like, don't look too closely at a specific spot, or else the players are going to know that you're definitely going to choose that one spot that's worth 12 points. And, if you like that sort of game, you know that you like that sort of game, right? It feels kind of a little old school in that sense.
So I wanted to ask, I mean, we talked last week about nature, and I wanted to bring this up as a bit of a sidebar here in terms of how these games that are doing basically multiple games in one package. We talked about how nature had all these modules that give very different experiences. And here you've got 2 boards, like two different maps that have very different play styles and how those dynamics play out. And like I said, if you look at the back of the box, it'll talk about Scotland and how you're playing, castles in Scotland, and Ryan Knitzer is up there wearing a kilt at the Spiel Des Jahres, and it will say in the corner, bonus map of Ireland, and you think, it's just like a little promo. It's not going to play much differently, and yet it is vastly different. And I have heard multiple other reviewers say that they only play the Ireland side of the map, that the Scotland feels like a tutorial, like an introductory segment. And we've seen so many games these days offer like this wide variety of it has a cooperative mode and a competitive mode and a solo mode, but how do you sell what the expectations are? If you were to just like play the Scotland map in Rebirth, for example, how does that set an expectation of like what else the game has to offer? Is it if you play Scotland, it's too simple, would you go any deeper? Would you even bother trying the Ireland side of the map?
I don't know if you can ever adequately kind of sell potential players on the kind of the charms of a given map type, but I think anyone that has played a game that is largely driven by and dependent on maps, I can name a few examples like Terraforming Mars, Formula D, there's 18XX. Obviously, the whole game of 18XX is based on the map. I think that anyone who's played those types of games knows the excitement of trying a new map, right? Because it's an easy sell. You already know the core rules. The core rules don't change. Ticket to Ride. Prime example.
Yeah.
It's an easy sell because you don't have to convince your game playing buddies that they have to learn a brand new set of rules. But those expansions with maps, not only do they provide more variety, they sort of break up the patterns that you're sort of used to. I always got to corner this part of the map early to get my point strategy in play. It sort of shakes up that, I guess, fatigue or exhaustion you can get with replaying the same map over and over again. But they will typically add one small little gimmick, won't they? So, like, Ticket to Ride maps are famous for this. Like, the Ticket
The
to Ride.
Tokyo map has like a zoomed in subway section. Or something.
Exactly. Or it might add, like, high-speed rail or something like that. And I think that that's just right. So the new map adds sheer variety just because of the geometry of it, but adding like the tiniest little rule addition makes things feel fresh. And you get the benefit of not having to resell. So I don't think you have to sell people on one specific map. I think just the fact that it is a new map will already sell those people. It's based on how tired they are of the maps that they're used to playing.
Well, I think this one does go a little further than just a new map. Like there's quite a lot of extra layers going on here. A lot more plates to spin, basically simultaneously. And like most games will tell you to start with the most simple version. Like they don't want to scare off people, trying to learn games for the first time. But they don't always sell like how much more advanced does this game get. Like is the other map just a different map, or is it a much more advanced game that I might like a lot more if I am an advanced player? Should I start with the more advanced map? And I think games could do a better job of selling those different experiences, and like, again, they want to be careful not to scare away potential customers, obviously, right? But I don't think they always do service to the full breadth that these games have to offer.
It's interesting how, I mean, I haven't played both. I've only played the one, but I'm surprised that they have sort of tied the key game differences, namely the tower bonuses and then the shared or private goals, to a specific map. You'd think that they would try to divorce those and give the players the choice to add those in as they want. I mean, I guess Terraforming Mars does the same thing, where there's different sides of the map, and then the kind of the longer term shared or first come first serve goals are different based on the specific map. I think you could sort of divorce those. Like, unless it requires some specific spot on the map that is a named spot, why tie it to that specific map?
Yeah, nothing comes to mind for why you couldn't play Scotland with the tower variant, for example.
Other than that, it probably doesn't have the token spaces,
or a different number of cathedrals. I'm not sure. I don't want to like backseat and like fix this game, but yeah, I'm more just curious, like how do games sell this sort of thing? And as I said, we discussed last week that I thought Nature did this relatively well in explaining like different complexity levels and different types of experience in each module, for example. But not all games. I think a lot of games these days are trying to do too many things. And, games of service, right? Like every game wants to be the one game that everyone will play and offer so many different experiences to so many different people, but maybe splitting themselves a little too thin.
Yeah. I like I said, I think successful game sort of like franchises will shake things up, but a little bit at a time, and not add too much. Like, it's remarkable, like the core example, the prime example of a game that adds just a little difference with each expansion is like Carcassonne, right? Like the simplest expansion is just like the river, let's just add these 9 tiles.
It's like adding a drop of color to your glass of water, right? This is just slightly different.
Yeah, or like a splash of citrus to a cocktail or something like that. It makes all the difference in the world. So I think you can do a lot with a little. And strangely, Scotland and Ireland seem like actually fairly different from each other. It's not a little change. It's not just the geometry of the map. It's a philosophical change.
A couple of other quick things to before we move on. So the theming of this is like this post-apocalyptic, what do they call it? Solar punk? Like it's like, green energy, rebuilding, very positive. You're not attacking each other.
Some people call it hope punk.
It's a very vibrant presentation, like lovely art and everything. It doesn't read particularly well. Some of the colours sort of blend together. It's not always easy to read the board state. But also, I don't think that theme comes across at all. You may as well just be attacking medieval cities as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's right. Like, it's the energy and the food production. Like, that's not a very new concept. It could just as well be, 19th century
army. Industrial
Revolution too, right? They're essentially the same. I think that people are probably a little bit tired of those games of colonialism and industrial revolution. The environmental impacts are not exactly positive. So they probably just wanted to spin it in a way that would be a bit more appealing to a modern
it's
day.
no more pasted on than any of those medieval games, right? It's just like I would have liked them to do more with that theme. Like I like that theme. I want to see it expressed a little better.
But do people buy Reiner Knizia games because of the theme? Do they, Daniel?
Apparently not.
I don't. Oh, let's just say. But, I enjoyed it. I thought that it was a lot of fun. I don't know how much replayability there will be long term. The same map on Ireland. I don't think Scotland sounds too appealing to me, but maybe if you do play it enough, you get to learn some strategies.
Yeah, and I think it's a very accessible one of these games. It's much more accessible than say Tigris and Euphrates, when you only have one tile per turn. Not always obvious. It's fairly prescriptive. Ireland slightly less so, but I can see why it has widespread appeal. It's not quite enough for me, I don't think, but it's definitely satisfying. It has that same appeal of Tigris and Euphrates, where you see the chits grow across the board like a virus, or like cells populating across the board in the way that you really want to see a time lapse at the end of the game and see how things spread out.
For sure, yeah. You feel some pride in what you've accomplished at the end of the game. Of course, it's like any sort of city builder, empire builder. You say, I did that. All that swath of orange tiles is me. Feels good.
Absolutely.
Okay, shall we move on to another game?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Mark?
Okay, I think we talked a decent amount about Rebirth, so I'm going to talk about another game I've been working on for a little while. This is a game that I've been working on for probably 30 years. It's a retro game, yes, but it is available on modern platforms. The game I'm talking about is called Earthbound, a sort of a legendary JRPG, but a very different JRPG from a lot of the others that I've talked about. For instance, it's not set in Japan. And also, it's not set in Fantasyland or any sort of historical period. It's set in sort of a modern day. It's literally set in a place called Eagle Land.
The magical land of hamburgers and blue jeans.
That's right. So it's very much a kind of the modern day set game with, modern, aka 1980s or 90s technology like corded telephones and VCRs, things like that, ATM machines. So this was a game for Super Nintendo that was a rental for me. Good luck getting a boxed copy of this. I think probably you'll have to drop several hundreds of dollars to get that.
So remind me, sorry, what's the connection with this game in the Mother series?
So the game called Earthbound in North America is Mother 2.
Right, okay.
But it is a highly localized version because essentially I think the story of Mother is probably a little better told by other podcasters than me, but from what I've heard told, it's a collaboration between this like kind of like a novelist who is sort of like a comedy writer, and like maybe this person is even like a film director or something like that, but basically not a video game industry person had their hand in writing this. And I think like the composer even was like inspired by and maybe even plagiarized some Beatles tunes. There's lots of background to this, but Earthbound is Mother 2. The prequel, Mother 1, is available in the West officially, and it's even available on the same platform I played this. So both Earthbound 0, I think it's called, and Earthbound. So Earthbound 0 is for the NES or the Famicom. I don't know if they actually released a cartridge of this ever, or if this was localized after the fact. I don't know. I would have to look that up. But Earthbound, Mother 2, is for the Super Nintendo / Super Famicom. So I only ever played the English version. That's all I can talk about. And Mother 3 has never been localized in English outside of Japan. So everyone always says, hey, next E3 or next Nintendo Direct, that's going to be the announcement. Hasn't happened yet. But both the first two versions are available on Nintendo Classics, which is the paid online service you can play on the Switch. So, Earthbound It's like I said, it's set in the modern day. So things you use for your weapons are like things like slingshots, and your armor are like baseball caps and things like that. Very, very charming. The first thing you do when you play this game is you name your characters, which are, a young boy who's you might recognize is very popularized in other games like Smash Brothers. His name is Ness. The default name of this character is Ness. Of course,
All American boy.
Yeah, you can rename all of them. There's his friends, I think Paula, Jeff, and Pooh. I don't know why the guy's called Pooh, but there you go. And then his dog, King. And this is something I distinctly remember even as a child, is you can name your favorite thing. And
like a favorite meal, is it? I
your
think
favorite meal.
Yeah.
And your favorite thing. So my favorite meal, I would always write fried chicken. And my favorite thing, depending on what platform I would play it on, would be like my RG35XX or something like that. So that's always fun to drop in there. It's a little bit like Mad Libs. Anyways, I started this a long time ago, and maybe it was because there was a rental. And maybe because I had a mental block as a youth that I thought JRPGs were these vast, worlds with great depth and great sophistication, and that I, a simple child, could never beat one, or unless I spent so many dozens and dozens of hours on these things. But I've grown older and revisited some of these and played them and made much more progress. I never thought I would finish Phantasy Star, but I did. And I haven't beaten Earthbound yet, but I've made much more progress than I did in the past. And I said that this is different from a lot of other JRPGs, not just in theme and setting, but this game just has so much charm to it and humor. Have you played a lot of Earthbound?
I played the first half hour or so, but I didn't follow through. My JRPG backlog is rather labored right now. I keep adding more to that. I'm still working on Dragon Quest 7 and Final Fantasy 4 waiting in the wings, so it'll be a while before I get to it.
Yeah, I do it to myself too. I play a lot of like terrible JRPGs when I just should be playing good JRPGs. And this is one of those games in the good pile. So, like I said, the game is written by a literature author, and the localization, I believe, is significant. Like, a lot of the same jokes that they used in Japanese would just not fly in North America, not just because of the language difference, but because of cultural differences. Like, pop culture references have to reference different things.
It's a very outsider perspective of American culture, right?
It is, except that they got English-speaking people that knew North America to do the localization. And I think this is the prime example of when games shifted from literal translations, which got you results like, all your base are belong to us, or things like... what was the famous one in Castlevania where what is a man? Things like that.
Right, yes.
Well,
these are a little pile of secrets.
Yeah. These literal translations just didn't really capture the essence of what, some of that dialogue meant. And in this case, they literally localized it. So localizing, if you're unaware, is not just literal translation. It's rewriting in a sense that conveys the same overall sense and meaning, but with cultural touch points that the intended audience, secondary audience, would understand.
Especially if it's like a lot of wordplay and puns and things like that. Like you look at like the Dragon Quest monsters, or even Pokemon. How every Pokemon name is basically a pun of two different things, which would not be a very different name from the Japanese version.
Right. It's very strange that there are actually a significant percentage of Pokemon that are
crossover, definitely.
That are named differently in English and Japanese, but some of them are the same. Pikachu, untranslated.
Pikachu doesn't mean anything. It's just popular enough that that name stuck, right?
But like, I think Slowpoke is not called... No, which one? Is Slowpoke the one that lies down and blocks your progress?
That's Snorlax.
Snorlax, okay. Yeah. Snorlax is a totally different name in Japanese, and it essentially translates to like immovable obstacle or something like that. It's nothing to do with him sleeping. It's just that he's like a blocker for you. So Absolutely. Localization is a different beast to translation. And this was one of the earliest cases where they really took the effort to localize it, and they did localize it well. And I think that's why, like, this game just like makes me laugh. Like, it makes me laugh, chuckle. Every NPC that you talk to has like just quirky off the wall dialogue and just straight up jokes. It's just like stand up comedy routine or something like that. There's like these charming little side scenes. Like there's this band, this recurring, music group that you meet in the course of the game, and they're like this very much like a Blues Brothers ripoff, which of course would be a popular media touch point at that time, with Blues Brothers being a movie that was popular in the 80s and 90s. So that's a case where they've localized things really well. And I think that of the few, basically the game is divided into like 12 different towns sections. So kind of like chapters. You have to move linearly between them. So there's not really like an overworld per se. You're sort of linearly moving from town to town, divided by these tunnels or bridges. And I would say that each one of these towns has like more charm and wit than the entirety of some of these other JRPGs that I'm playing, like the aforementioned Star Ocean 1 from a week or two ago. So I haven't beat this one yet, but I'm making much more progress, and I'm really, really enjoying my time. And this might just be my early candidate for my game of the year.
Or the game of 20 years, apparently, considering how long you've been playing this.
Yeah, many, many years coming. I will say this one thing. This game does make a lot of like kind of obtuse leaps of logic to progress in the game.
Like an adventure game and like sort of puzzles and things, yeah.
It is definitely an artifact of its age and of that kind of era of game design, is like quirky writers make for very quirky scenarios. And as a result, you might run into a brick wall. Thankfully, every town has a very, very prominent hint giver. And this seems to be like dynamic because I have used it. And basically he charges you like $5 or $6 or whatever every time you use him. And he'll give you a specific hint about where you should go next to unravel the plot. And a lot of the times it is very, very necessary, because unless you spoke to absolutely every person in town, which you should always do in JRPGs, you should do it for the jokes, in this one in particular, but you should do it because you need that one critical clue that's going to tell you that this is the way that you defeat this creature or impediment. So that definitely holds up for this one.
I'm reminded of Dragon Quest VII, which I've been playing, which really struggles with that. And like, it's an open world, like, and you can go anywhere. Like, right now where I'm at, I could go to 16 different places in the past or 16 different places in the future, and all these spaces in between. So if I'm not sure where to go next, I am basically lost. There is no way to play that without a guide. It seems Earthbound is a little more focused and linear, at least, and so you're a little more constrained. There's only so many people you can talk to.
Yeah, usually people, including myself, like their, hackles go up when they hear that a JRPG or an RPG in general is linear. That's the sort of the antithesis of an RPG. The Final Fantasy 13 is called like Hallway Quest or something, because basically you can only go one way down a linear path. And it gets derided. But this game, it's just something about like the writing and the delivery. It really makes up for any inherent loss of freedom. Like, I don't miss the overworld. And it's kind of refreshing to have an RPG that does away with it. There are some of the maps are sprawling and some of them are large, and you can get sort of lost in them. But knowing where to go next counts for a lot. And I think that not knowing where to go next has definitely frustrated me and made me want to stop playing games like that Dragon Quest III HD that I was playing for a little while.
So I remember another podcast I listened to. All My Best Friends Are Digital actually covered this quite recently, and my main takeaway from their thoughts was that it's even for its time, this was not a game that looked particularly good. It was already sort of superseded by some other JRPGs in graphics and depth of gameplay, whereas this is really just carried by its sense of character and charm.
I would beg to differ. I think Earthbound looks fantastic. It's got an art style that really still looks fantastic. The characters are recognizable and likable. Actually, I think there was an art exhibit of Earthbound. They made like clay models of the characters, and they used that in the promotional art of the game in Japan. And they had an art exhibit of that this year in Japan. They pulled out the original physical models that they did and rendered them. So it goes to show that the design, they took a lot of care into creating. And I think this game does some really amazing things with the background animation during combat. You'll have to watch some YouTube videos. There's no way I can possibly do it justice by explaining it with words, but they do some really trippy things.
It's very psychedelic.
Exactly. Like there's literal hippies that are enemies that you have to defeat in this game, and you'll think that you were smoking something like the hippies were when you're attacking them, because of your spells, which are like these like ESP powers that your characters have, will blow these like kind of screen warping, screen melting effects, which you would not believe were possible on the Super Nintendo, but they look fantastic to this day, and well worth playing. If you have access to Nintendo Classics, I'd highly recommend booting this up. And I'm going to have to boot up the Earthbound Origins or whatever, because I never did end up playing that either.
There was a Mother 3 too, right?
There is a Mother 3, but like I said, not translated officially into English. There probably are fan translations that you can access. And the cartridges are readily accessible in the retro shops in Japan. There you go.
Okay, well, I had a couple of other games to discuss, but in order to give them enough time to go into detail, I think we might call it a little short today and move on to dessert.
Yeah, we've already talked for an hour. That's not short. Let's move on. No problem.
Let's keep it not longer than it would normally be.
For sure. All right. Well, I definitely have some subjects for dessert. How about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, I've just got a quick one here. Cheating a little bit in terms of our dessert normally being non-gaming related. This isn't so much a game, but a game soundtrack. So I can't remember if I discussed this when I played the demo a couple of months ago. Denshattack, a video game that just came out a week or so ago. Basically, it's like you're playing as trains, or like the driver of a train, but it's like third-person train moving along tracks and basically doing like Tony Hawk moves essentially, and doing like front flips and back and forth between different tracks, and very much an expressive platformer, score chaser. Very extremely stylish. I have much motivation for that kind of gameplay. But I saw a couple of recommendations for the soundtrack that I had to listen to, and yeah, it really is something. It's 3 hours of it for one thing, from a variety of artists, including Andrew One, T. Lopez, Sean Bialo, Tumelo, an artist that I quite like.
Yeah, Tumelo is responsible for the Messenger soundtrack, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's quite prolific. He also does some work for the Remap and Waypoints podcast that I listen to regularly. But it's hard to describe. So many different genre buzzwords come to mind that I'd probably be completely wrong. But there's a lot of like electronica and funk and J-pop and all kinds of genres going on in here. I mean, largely what it comes down to is Dreamcast core, essentially. It's very much riffing on like that jet set radio vibe. But it's a really eclectic mix. Very active. Like most video game soundtracks, I'll put on as background noise while I'm playing a board game or something, right? Whereas this is something I am actively listening to for 3 hours. It reminds me a lot of my favorite soundtrack from the last few years, Paradise Killer. And it's from a lot of similarities to that. So I really enjoyed it. I think what was the track? Strength is Absolute would be my recommendation to start with this one.
That's really cool. Yeah, that sounds up my alley as well. Haven't played the game yet, so I don't have access to the soundtrack. That said, you can get. I was talking to my child about this, my oldest child, about game soundtracks because we picked up some in Japan. That being the land of recorded game soundtracks, they've definitely led the way on that way before that picked up any sort of notoriety here in North America. But some game soundtracks can be readily accessed in a couple of ways I can think of. Well, Nintendo Music app, of course, for those Nintendo-based games. That's available on smart devices. Steam will give away a lot of the soundtracks with the games that you purchase, depending on the game, and sometimes you have to buy them.
It's like the deluxe edition of the game will come with the soundtrack, yeah.
Sometimes you have to access them, you have to purchase them separately, but there will be a tab in your Steam client, whatever platform it's on, and you access it and you can listen to the soundtracks that way. And the third way I can think of is one way Sure, yeah, of course you can access it on those platforms, other streaming services as well, as Apple Music has a lot of them. But I discovered that I owned a lot of game soundtracks inadvertently by purchasing the related games on Humble Bundle. So if you buy a lot of games either directly through their store or as part of a bundle, they'll often include the soundtracks as well. And I just took a look in the back area of my Humble Bundle purchases, and I noticed that I owned a lot of digital soundtracks. And because I've been trying to build a digital music collection, I just, wouldn't you know it, grabbed a bunch of those and loaded them onto my library. And not all of them have been, winners. Especially, it's hard to build a connection to a game you haven't really, the soundtrack of a game you haven't played. But that Messenger one from Too Mellow, I tell you, is a real banger. So happen to own that, and it's really good.
I remember liking that game. I'll have to go and re-listen to that soundtrack.
There you go.
I'm assuming it's on Spotify. I don't use Spotify anymore. I switched to Qobuz. Qobuz?
Yeah, Qobuz is
my
great.
now streaming service, yeah.
Yeah, and it has high definition audio.
Yes, and it definitely a noticeable improvement.
That's really cool. Yeah, I want to get Qobuz, but I have been using it to purchase a la carte digital purchases when they have sales now and again.
Excellent.
They did have a sale recently, it might be over, but where they were selling a lot of Ubisoft game soundtracks. I don't have a big personal connection, but they were distinctly selling those.
The Rayman Origins, Rayman Legends. I have the physical soundtrack for Rayman Origins. I got with like a deluxe edition at some point, and that's a really good soundtrack.
Nice. There you go. There's an Ubisoft soundtrack to listen to. Okay, so for my dessert course, I'll be cheating a little bit as well. This time I'm going to be talking about not one but two manga series by the same author. I just realized that I happen to be reading them back to back. Like today I finished 2 volumes of manga, more than 2 volumes actually, but one of them was by the author and the next one was by the same author. Different series. The 2 series in question are Asadora and 20th Century Boys, the latter being probably the more familiar, more famous one, by the author Naoki Urasawa. And Urasawa, of course, is Japanese. These are Japanese manga, and both really popular ones. And 20th Century Boys is probably like his kind of most popular series. It's a real blockbuster. They made a live-action film out of it. And it's really kind of like cemented his place as a sort of great creator of manga, great mangaka. He also more recently was responsible for a series called Monster. And also he's the creator of the Pluto series, which I talked about as an animated series. Mm-hmm. So I did not realize that it was based on a manga. I should have. And he's the one who wrote the manga. Yeah. Of course, the story is based off of Tezuka's Astro Boy work, but Pluto is a kind of original series. Anyways, this guy is sort of known for specific things. In this case, these 2 series, Asadora and 20th Century Boys, are specifically about Japan in the mid to late 20th century, which is called the Showa era in Japan. This is Japanese kind of reign the emperor at the time. It's a long period, and it's very, very retro, popular right now in Japan. And 20th Century Boys makes a very clear example of that. It starts in 1969 and ends in the year 2000, because that's the end of the century. And it follows a large group of just children, young children. And it follows them for many years of their lives, from young childhood to adulthood. And it doesn't just follow their lives in a very simple way. There is a sort of like a conspiracy that's stringing these stories together. And basically it's very complicated. It involves like cults, murder, prophecy, giant robots, and it's all wrapped up in a mystery. They do not explain things very simply at all. It's intended to be this intricate web plot. And it ran for something like 14 or 15 volumes or something like that. And oddly enough, I read the first volume and then the last volume in order. And I thought, hey, there's something missing here. And it's because 20th Century Boys runs for like 15 volumes or something like that. But there's a follow-up series called 21st Century Boys. And it's only 2 volumes. So what I did was I got volume 1 of 20th Century, and I got volume 2 of 21st Century.
I made the same mistake recently with, I think I talked about Nice House on the Lake and Nice House by the Sea. It's like they're technically subsequent series, part of the same series, but I thot they were unrelated. I made the same mistake.
Yeah, it's very warped.
Does this play with like historical accuracy, or like in terms of as it's moving through the times, or is it largely like, is it modernized in how it explores these past periods?
It definitely crosses over into history, actual history. So, it talks about, this starts in 1969. So they're talking about like real world. They're talking about Woodstock. They're talking about Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and things like that. So real things. They're talking about some protesting that was happening, like it was happening in America, anti-war protests, Vietnam War. These sort of things are coinciding with the occurrences in the story, but definitely it diverges from history as it goes on later. Obviously, the sort of the conspiracy and the plot that these boys mostly are involved in sort of balloon into kind of grandiose ways. And of course, that doesn't tie directly to history, but it definitely feels like you're there. Kind of like the Wonder Years, like that TV show. It's set in those historical times, but it's telling an original story.
Reminds me a little bit of like, some Stephen King, It, or some of those that are like, it's spanning wide periods of time, but with a very specific sense of time and place.
Yeah, that's right. That's
and also supernatural monsters.
That's a good example, actually. That sort of factor of nostalgia is built right into it, right? Because that time of the late 20th century was a time of looking back, right? Even at that time, we're looking back at it now, obviously, but people felt like it was the culmination of something.
And of course, we have what's the game coming out? I know it plays with it's an earlier time period, but from the Yakuza developers. That's
Stranger Than Fiction, I think it's called. Stranger Than Heaven.
Yeah, yes, in Heaven. Yes, yeah, and that's also like I think it's covering a wide span of time, following characters through the decades, I believe.
Right, I think
more early 1900s.
The early part of the 20th century for sure. So the second series I am reading at the same time is called Asadora, and it is also very much set in the 20th century, but earlier. So this one, I said 20th Century Boys started in 1969. This one starts in before the Tokyo Olympics, which I think was like 65. It was 65. So it was a little bit before then. It was right before the Tokyo Olympics. And it leads up into, I think, somewhere during the 80s or something like that. So it follows basically a smaller group of people, and this time mostly girls. I said 20th Century Boys was mostly boys. Very, very large group. And part of that is part of the mystery. Like there's a known character that sort of ends up being a villain, and you don't know which one of the boys is the villain. So that's part of the storytelling. In Asadora, it's mostly centered on one woman, young woman, Asa, starts off as a literal child, like 13th child of a large family, and she gets orphaned through this typhoon accident. And through one reason or another, she becomes an airplane pilot who goes on to be the only one who can save Japan from a giant raging kaiju monster. Not like the giant rampaging monster you're thinking of. An entirely different one.
Legally distinct.
Exactly. But it is played very kind of, it seems very grounded. There is a lot of mystery involved as well. But this is a lot more like slice of life into the life of Asa, her two closest friends. And it's very much like bringing the sense of feminism that was lacking in 20th Century Boys is definitely here. Like the young girls are doing it for themselves. They are figuring out their lives. They have big goals and ambitions, and they're either literally saving the world or becoming, pro wrestlers or becoming, pop singers. Like they are basically taking the world into their own hands. And that's very encouraging to see. And this manga has a sense of that mystery too, because you don't know where this monster is coming from. That is sort of always present in her life. It's the reason why her parents were killed, and it's constantly threatening things, like it's threatening the 1965 Olympics in Tokyo. And that's something that's a similarity between the two series, is not just that it covers the 20th century with a nostalgic point of view, but that the heroes of the story and the people that move the story in a lot of these sort of historical dramas, I feel like it from the West, would always involve like police officers or government agents or something like that, right? It's always got to be these specific people in authority are gonna tackle the problem using their high levels of access and their high degree of training and things like that.
Competency porn.
Exactly. Like things like, JFK. A lot of Oliver Stone movies, always to do with like soldiers or government agents or things like that. But both of these series don't make people in authority the focus. They make like regular people the
right
focus.
Person in the right place. I reminded a little bit of, speaking of Godzilla, Minus Zero, was it?
Yes.
That was much more focused on the ground level, just the everyday people.
Yeah.
Godzilla was more of a backdrop afterthought.
Yeah, despite the fact that the hero was like a war
Well, they were a soldier, I guess.
veteran.
But it was somewhat removed from that.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely showcasing the real people's kind of real lives and struggles. And that's definitely what both of these series cover. So if you're interested at all in Japan and the 20th century and in history, but also like a little bit of flair of sci-fi and fantasy, these series have it. And definitely they involve a sense of intrigue and mystery. Definitely more so 20th Century Boys. It's like definitely strong on that level of cults and prophecy, and Asadora is much more a little bit more whimsical and a little bit more grounded, ironically. But both are highly recommended, both by Naoki Urasawa, and I've read these entirely from paperback volumes from the Vancouver Public Library, so highly accessible. And I think there's just been a newer recent imprint of 20th Century Boys published by, I don't know who the publisher was, but in English. So you can get those very easily. Okay. There you go.
Well, if you have any questions or comments on today's games or topics, you can contact us at omnigamersclub@gmail.com or at our website, omnigamers.club. Anything you wanted to plug this week, Mark?
Well, let's see. No, I think I mentioned the things before. I mentioned some crowdfunding campaigns, and I read some news you should go check out, some trailers you should go see.
Awesome. Well, I will be away next week, going to Toronto for a few days. I did just see that there's a gachapon parlor right across the road from my hotel, which I'll definitely be partaking in. So I'm not sure what is on the cards for next week, Mark. Maybe we'll have another guest. We'll see. So stay tuned to you can on Blue Sky is probably the best place to see news of what's happening. You can find the podcast there at Omni Gamers Club and myself at Board Game Feast.
That's right. I'll try and arrange a fill-in guest for your absence, but there may be a brief 1 week without an episode, but trust us, we haven't gone away entirely. We'll be back just because you'll be away like a couple times in the next coming month or so, right?
Yes, yeah, a couple of smaller trips.
All right, I'll do my best to fill in those spots, but we may be off the air for one of those weeks.
Stay tuned.
There you go. We'll let you know by means. All right, so go check out our episodes on YouTube if you haven't yet. We're still pushing our episodes there. Our earliest episodes are available in audio form on a podcatcher of your choosing. You're listening to them right now, so you probably know. Otherwise, share them out with your friends, people you know. Please, recommendations are highly appreciated. We don't pay for ads, or we don't ask for funding, so also any feedback that you can give would also be appreciated. We love to hear your feedback.
Organic podcast.
All organic, yeah, homegrown. There you go.
Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and thank you, Mark. And remember to have a balanced diet of games. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.